Well, and even if you know his motivations, but then he like a villain can still be unrelatable because, oh, you had a tragic past story, but then you killed 60,000 people. Okay, not relatable anymore,
Yeah.
So
I'm Sam.
and I'm Allie, and this is the Knit Ritz podcast. This week we're talking characters, particularly the writing excuses or Brandon Sanderson's framework for talking about character development, using proactivity, relatability, or sympathy, and competency as our sort of sliders, which we'll discuss. But yeah, but before that, did you read? Did you write?
I did not write.
Okay.
Um, yep, didn't write. And I'm still reading Throne of Glass. So I am
Okay.
in um, Crown of Shadows. I have like the last bit. I've been kind of trying to pump the brakes. Huh?
Queen of Shadows or Crown of Midnight?
Sorry, Crown of Midnight.
Okay, okay.
You
Wait, that's
get
only
it.
the second one. I thought you were okay.
No,
Okay,
no,
gotcha.
I'm on the second one. I just ordered Assassin's Blade in a physical copy because that's the next one I will read because I read it
Oh, very controversial.
that way. And I've been trying to pump the brakes because I was reading the books to my husband, and then he was
Yeah.
like, "Well, I just want to recap. I like your recaps. Like I like how you tell the story, which is like, oh, you're losing so much nuance, but okay."
Yeah.
And so then I
It's a step.
did. Yeah, I did. Like I had like I don't know, 7 chapters to recap. And he was like, bro, that took like 45 minutes. And I was like, that's a lot. And so now I read another like 12 chapters or something ridiculous. And so I'm like, am I going to do this for you or am I just going to keep reading? So, who knows? His Game of Thrones, or sorry, his Throne of Glass, um, time might be over, but that's what I'm reading.
Okay, it's a little seed, and one day he'll be like, you know
Yeah.
what, I want to pick up that story again.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And if
very
it's not, he at least gave it a good old college try and he was
I
like,
wouldn't
maybe
call it a
you're
college try, but I'll call it a
yeah,
try.
he was like,
Just kidding.
maybe your books aren't as silly as I thought. And I'm like, that's fine. Although I think that he just likes when I
He likes
read,
to
and
tease you.
so he does like to tease me too.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll just read him spicy scenes and be like, take
Yeah.
notes. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll just read like listen to this,
Yeah.
sometimes too
Yeah.
because of things, sometimes because of bad things. Like I'm reading a book that I think has some moments that aren't the best written. I'll be like, listen to this shit, and I do that a lot.
Yeah, I do that to him too. There was when I was reading Fearless, some of the dialogue, I was like, "What is this?" And so I would like read him some of the pages, and he was like, "That's what you're reading?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I'm reading."
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I did read that whole series, but yeah.
I think it's
Mhm.
good to read stuff like that. Like I basically anything that does well, I think it's good to read because that at least tells you like what is getting people's interest and
Mhm.
how and why. And it's also just like interesting. I think I could read basically anything from like a study perspective. And there are
Mhm.
parts to every book that's especially if it's done well, there's something in there that's good, that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's how I kind of see a lot of books. And also I think we're very established that we're over that elitist academic high
Yeah,
art.
yeah,
Obviously we like high art, but we're also
sure.
not, so
Yeah, but
yeah, I
we're
don't
not.
really
We're not.
think about that or
Yeah,
try
we're
to,
not. We don't
be
only live in
choosy.
that vein, and we
Yeah.
don't have the
And things can be fun.
attachment of like this is what art is and anything that isn't this is less than. You're like, no, that's fine. I'm good with not having. Yeah. How
So
about
yeah.
you? Did you read
Uh
or write?
I oh, I wonder how much I wrote this week. I was writing. I was actively trying to write. I was like thinking about stuff. Kale and I we went to a concert on the way back. We were talking about my character a lot and just like kind of that felt like writing, but it technically wasn't. And Yeah, I wrote oh, yeah, I had this interesting, weird little almost like a magic system scene,
Mhm.
um, with this, like, foreman character. Um, and so I think I have, let's see. Oh, 1,500 words? Sorry,
Okay.
okay, I wonder if I actually wrote that all this week. But anyway, about something like that. But yeah, so and then as far as reading, um, oh, I read like 200 pages of Outlander, and I finally got over that kind of like hump of like, you know, you know what I mean? Like
Consensual,
having
non-consent, something weird.
oh yeah, but like it was also kind of a point in the book where I was kind of annoyed, not annoyed, but just like didn't really want to read for
Yeah.
a bit. Just because I was like, yeah, I don't know. Um and So now I got over and I read like 200 more pages and there was a lot of stuff that happened and that was interesting. And I think I've hit another kind of lull. Okay, I was wrong. It's 735 words that I wrote. Okay. Anyway, um so I've hit a lull, but it's still pretty good. And I think I will finish it. It is, it is interesting that it's like probably we have one of the early romanticities, like it is romance and well, it's really historical, but I
Mhm.
guess there's magic. Anyway, so it's also interesting. I don't really very rarely do I read books set in our world. So it's like weird to be like, oh, this is in England and like these are real things. Not
Yeah.
all of them, but like that's very interesting. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I've always wanted to
Time
just build
travel right?
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying I wrote 700 words and read like 200 pages. But I did a lot of I feel like I was listening to Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures, like I just
Mhm.
in the background listening to a bunch of them. So if we can count that as some kind of hybrid,
Yeah.
it's about writing and about
Yeah. I
characters
mean,
and
you at
stuff. It
you at
was
least
fun.
did things that feed into
Yeah.
the reading and
Yeah.
writing world. Yeah.
Yeah, it was those were interesting. I remember how much I like listening to shit like that where I'm just like kind of
Mhm.
like Gina Denny. I like to just
Yeah.
listen to her all her playlists and stuff.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, so and then you said you didn't really write this week?
No, I did not write this week.
Yeah.
I have
And that's
thoughts.
okay.
I have ideas
Yeah, you keep them
and
in your head like you
yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
it's brave. This is
Um
brave.
but yeah, I'm having a hard time putting it on paper here lately, but
Yeah.
we're
I'm sure
getting
you'll get there. You'll
yeah,
get
yeah,
there.
yeah. You know, mental health space is getting better and
Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I was really anxious and a little mad at the world last week, so I was like, I can't write in that headspace. I can't just be like,
Oh, sometimes you can though.
I know I should sometimes because I'm like, I need a villain, and I'm like, oh, I got a couple of them in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I created like 6 villains when I first started writing my story. I just kept writing villain characters because I was
Mhm.
like, I'm fucking pissed. Um, well, that story really started with a lot of like that kind of energy. So,
Yeah.
um, it's funny. I've almost shifted entirely to this new the Mina story as
Mhm.
opposed to that first one. Like I have like so much stuff with it, but now I'm like kind of only thinking about the it's weird. I'm
Mhm.
sure that's just like how it goes, but it's weird because I never did big projects. I
Yeah.
always did like flash fiction, and
Mhm.
my poems were short. So even if they were like connected, they were never like long. It's very
I feel
interesting.
like I feel like one of the things I'm running into as well is that like now that I'm thinking of my writing as like an actual project and
Hmm.
thinking of it as something that I like truly want to put in the world and thinking of it as like building a craft, which sounds oddly
Hmm.
like weird artsy for me to be like I'm building a craft. Um
Hmm.
I'm thinking of all the things I fucked up.
And well,
And
okay,
so
this
I
is
keep being
why.
like so like even today when you sent me this sort of sliding scale for these three things, I'm like, fuck, all I gotta go back. All my character, like how what? And like
No, they're not because you have instincts and they're actually not. You maybe are
yeah,
just judging it a little harshly, but
probably.
none of
And
your characters are all
well,
on
and
the
I
wrong
think
side.
too that there's that difference between having instincts of what you want your characters to be doing, and then when you get sort of formal language for it and you start putting that through it, you start second guessing yourself because I'm not a formal writer. And so
Mhm.
once I have this sort of like, here's rubrics, here's the formality, here's how to build a craft, I'm like, I was just having fun for a minute. And then you
Yeah.
start thinking, like, okay, well, this is something I really want to put out into the world. I have to start putting it through these, it's sort of paces. And you're like, that's gonna be a lot of editing, which is fine. Again, I'm not I, I'm
Yeah, it's part of
I'm
it, yeah.
intimidated by the editing process, but I'm not
Mhm.
I'm open to critique. I'm open to people telling me that things work or don't work. I want to
Mhm.
put out something that's good and compelling. And so I would
Yeah.
actually much rather have people read it and be like, that was shit, than have my fear keep it in a Google Doc forever.
Yeah.
Um
And I
and
will
again,
say
you can always edit to make things great, right? And so but it's a little daunting sometimes that I'm like, "Oh, like here's a new skill that I have that I didn't have for the first 33,000 words. How is that?" And so I feel like I'm gonna have kind of like I know you didn't watch it, but I'm gonna like have like the reverse Game of Thrones TV series problem where like
mhm.
it starts out real fucking shit
No.
storytelling, and then it's gonna end really well, and then I'm gonna have to, like, go and rewrite, which I'm gonna have to
Well,
anyway,
yeah,
so it
that
is
y
it
you
is
will do
fine.
regardless, but yeah.
Um, but
Uh,
yeah, I'm just, I feel like I have a lot of endpoints in mind, and I have, like, kind of big plot points along the way. Um, we're just flushing it out. We're just getting there. So last week's exercise of like plotting out
oh, yeah.
the narrative arc was super helpful because it helped me flesh out Liev's story and like
Ah,
get, and
that's
I'm like,
right.
even if I just get those things written out, that's the meat of the story. And so if I need to add in some of those like connective transitional chapters, then that's fine. But I'm like, I like those points on that board, that's what needs to be written. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, but and I will also say, a lot of these can be like, first of all, nobody well, even if you publish your first book, you're not publishing your first book. You're publishing the second version of your first book, the third,
yeah,
fourth,
the
fifth version
fifth.
of your,
Yeah, yep,
So, and I will, the adage, you don't have to just because this is the first book you worked on does not mean that you're gonna necessarily toss it,
yeah,
but probably you'll end up rewriting huge portions of it, so where it's
absolutely, yeah.
basically like the fifth book you've written,
And yeah, and I know
or
that like the likelihood that people publish their first long form thing
mhm.
is and that I think that that's the thing that's like
It like bums you out.
it kind of bumps me out because
Yeah.
I'm
But
so
that's why I'm like,
very
you can just be committed and,
yeah, yeah, because
but you'll have written the equivalent of, like, 5 books at a time, I think. I think that's the natural process because nobody can
yeah.
just do this.
And I have other,
Yeah.
I have a novella in mind that still lives with
Mhm.
these characters. I
I
have
think those
some
are
like
super fun.
fantasy murder mystery ideas mulling around. So like there's other things that I could be doing.
Yeah.
Um
Well, and I just started some of my other stories just to try out random shit,
yeah.
and then I was like, "Oh, this is kinda taking off," and
Yeah.
so it diverts my
I
attention, but I'll
think
still go back to my first story too.
I think my problem is that I've become attached to these characters in a way that I'm like I can't not write about them. And
Yeah.
so it would
You
make
should
me
follow
sad
that.
if it doesn't, if it, but again, I mean, not that like, oh, there's always self publishing, but there is always self publishing. I know that that is like
Mhm. Yeah.
daunting in and of itself, and like that's really like launching. I mean, I
So
was
many
listening to
can of
Gina
worms.
Denny's where she's like,
She talked
that's a business that you're not just launching a book, you're launching a business, and like that's overwhelming. But like
yeah,
it's done. It can
you
be
could
done,
do it. Yeah.
and really it's about creating something that I love and that I want to share with people, and um, my hopes of being a famous bajillionaire author are not real nor valid, and that's not
It
why
would
I'm
nice to be
doing
a
it.
billionaire to,
You
no
know
most
what?
people like
In this
to
world,
be
I would just, I'd handle for like a, couple over 100,000
it would be
I,
incredible.
yeah,
And that's why I sort of set goals about just writing good because even if it never gets published, I could still be like, "I created this thing, it's cool." And so, but also, like, you can definitely work at it. I've heard a lot of people like kind of the same thing, like they're attached to their world or their characters or their magic system or whatever.
Yeah.
What's actually very common is sometimes they'll write one book and then they'll write another book in that world, and that's the one that gets bought, but then they still end up publishing, there's
Yeah.
that too. And so I think you should just whatever your instincts are, you should just follow them. Like if you're like, I gotta keep this side story in this story, like just go
Yeah.
run with
LJ Andrews, I believe.
it.
I don't know why that doesn't sound right coming out of my mouth, but I'm almost positive that's the right name.
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah, so she wrote
Broken Kingdom.
The Ever King, yeah, right, the
Mhm.
Everseas series, and that is like the second sort of series
Like
that she wrote. Because
generation.
yeah, because she wrote the Broken Kingdom series before, which is 9 books, right? And
And that's about their parents?
that's about their parents. And so
Yeah.
like that whole thing is self-published, and then she got picked up for the
Mhm.
Eversea series. And so, and then like they're retroactively like gonna uh take on her other things, I think some of them or whatever. Anyways,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's just yeah, it happens. My thing is like how expensive it is to self-publish. That's daunting
And there's a
because
lot of
like
scams, and
mhm.
there's yeah, it's really you gotta be careful if you do it, and you gotta
And vetting, I'll be like, "Sounds great,
so
do
yeah.
it," and find out that I've used some wildly problematic artist for
Yeah.
cover art
Gina
or
Denny has some videos on what to avoid and what not to.
yeah.
But that's also,
That's so far down the line, so, like, right
yeah.
now, it's just, like, getting something on the page, getting it to be
Mhm.
clean. Um
Oh, that's the other thing I was thinking. So the other thing is that these things are not necessarily meant to be a first draft thing. Like you should really I almost didn't want to show you some of the stuff that I have been like thinking about because I've been watching all these theory videos and podcasts and reading and stuff. Anyway, I've been thinking about it just cuz it's just interesting to me. But I almost was like maybe I shouldn't do that cuz I don't want to freak her out and make her stop writing. But then I was like, so it is interesting. But
Yeah, I
actually,
don't
Brandon
think that
Sanderson was talking about how he uses it more when he's not thinking about it. He just follows his instincts when he's writing with
mhm,
with the character sliders. But when he runs up against why don't I like this character or why is there this weird
got
problem
it,
with this character, he uses it as a diagnostic. And
got
I
it.
think you could use the story arc that way too. You could be like,
Yeah,
okay, so let me see what I have in my story. Wait, I never had a this thing. Let's
yeah,
That's why it feels like it's rushed,
yeah,
or stuff like that,
yeah,
so you could also just not use this and
yeah,
just or even just keep it in your mind,
mhm,
I have to, when am I making my character relatable or competent
mhm,
or proactive? And
yeah,
if I'm doing one of those things, I'm probably doing something that's interesting.
yeah.
Um,
I think I
but
would
sorry, and then yeah.
struggled the most with the relatability, because that is not within story, that's for the reader, right, where you're
But you're
like,
a human, so I think it
this is
actually,
true, this is true,
you know,
um, but I also don't
your
want
characters have relatability already.
yeah,
I
and I
know,
don't wanna have I don't want all of my characters to have, like, tragic stories, right? Like, that's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of why I started with Genevieve, where, like, her and Liev have, like, a good family. They're, like, solid, I don't know, lower middle class in the town that they live, right? They're,
Mhm.
like, their parents are good people. They were raised well, and they've got a
Yeah.
good something they've got some good dynamics. They're not perfect, and they're not, they still have goals and hopes and dreams and
Mhm.
things, but like they're content, they're satisfied, they're settled. And then shit gets
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's part of the like relatability, right? Where like I don't want to over sympathize, especially like if we change the word relatability to sympathy, like if you can sympathize with
Which it
them.
is used in they talk about it. Sometimes
Yeah,
reality, sometimes
and
it's
so,
sympathy.
like, this
Yeah.
sympathize with her as being like, she's just kind of a normal chick, like, nothing's
Mhm.
like, she's but it's not this, like, oh, it's she's we don't find her
Mhm.
in a fucking concentration camp on page 1,
Yeah.
right? Where we're like, "Oh god, like, this
Yeah.
person has this story." Um, yeah,
I
so I
will
don't know, I mean, it's
say
different ways, like, I think it's rateable in the mundanity of her,
yeah.
but it's not overly sympathetic.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. Let's just one for 1 second back up. Let's also just introduce this. Maybe I'll have like a
Yeah,
graphic or
sorry,
like links or something.
I just
No,
hit the
because we,
ground
we kind of
running.
naturally transitioned into talking about it anyway.
Yeah.
So the basically the structure is and Gina Denny has a great concise video on it. I'll post that with it. Obviously Sanderson has an entire like 2-hour YouTube video on it. He also I think it started it was popularized through this podcast he did in like 2014 called Writing Excuses, where he was I think he's a guest, or maybe it was his podcast, but whatever. He sort of talked about it there. They call it a three-pronged approach to character. But the three things that make your character interesting or compelling, um, obviously this is just his take, and but a lot of people, sort of, I think it's a really interesting discussion. But the three things are proactivity, relatability, and competency, with relatability being slash sympathy. Those are kind of the same or similar
Mhm.
enough that they're sometimes subbed in. So the basic premise is that any character should be, a mix of those things. And if you have a character who's super far, like they're totally incompetent, they don't do anything for themselves, they're just very inactive, and they're not relatable, like you just don't like them, there's nothing that makes them seem human. I would say the big thing with relatability is just like if you could show your character having like emotion or just like,
Yeah.
normal things. That's they don't even have to be like have a sad story or anything like that. If they have like just sort of genuine emotions and interactions that make sense to people, I think that's where you can get relatability. But so like if you have someone who's super, they don't have any of that,
Mhm.
that's a villain, right?
Yeah.
Um
That's a boring
where
villain, but it's a villain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And but and then the opposite is like Mary Sue character. So if everyone super competent, super relatable and kind and nice and sympathetic and super proactive and just doing it all, right? You also don't want to read about that person because
Yeah.
like they got their shit handled. They don't have any
Yeah.
growth to do. So those are the extremes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I really like how she talks about it as a sliding scale, right? Where you have like
Gina Denny,
reactive,
her
because it's
video.
not even like not yeah, yeah, where so it's like
Okay.
reactive versus proactive, and that your
Yes.
character can fall anywhere on that sort of spectrum. And
Hmm.
then the relatability versus unrelatable, or sympathetic versus unsympathetic, and then they can fall anywhere within that
Yeah.
spectrum. And then competency, right? Are they incompetent or are they highly competent? And again, that
Yeah.
sliding scale, and that those the places in which they land on the scale shouldn't be the same for each of those, right? That if you have a character that is highly proactive and maybe really relatable, but like maybe they're not completely competent, right?
Yeah.
So you
Like
can
she's being
have
yeah.
someone who's like, I'm going to go and save the world. I mean, it's Feyre, right? Super relatable, super proactive. I'm going to save Tamlin, but I'm a human. I don't know how I'm going to do that. And that competency
Mhm.
is low. And so that balances out and keeps her interesting during that last
Yeah.
portion of the first book, right?
Well, and I will okay, so and also Sanderson talks about it in his longer formats or in some whatever. He also this is also the way to show character growth is by having them move up in their competency. Actually, in fantasy, oftentimes, right, the training montage. What is that? That's
Yeah.
moving up in your competency slider.
Yeah.
Or so ideally, a character should move up or down depending. If they're a tragic character, they might move down on all the
Mhm.
sliders.
Mhm.
And maybe they move down on certain ones and certain things. Maybe their competency, like they're put in a situation where none of their skills, they're in a foreign situation, they don't know what to do, so they
Yeah.
suddenly lose all their competency or whatever, maimed or something. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways you can do it, but that's another way to sort of move the story along.
Yeah.
Or if they're depending, yeah, if they're a tragic character or a villain, you might move it in a negative direction, but generally probably positively. But yeah, I think I'll post the Gina Denny video and
Mhm.
maybe the Sanderson because I think
Leave
it's
the link
Sanderson's
for it.
thing.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm gonna
listeners
post it in
who
the description
yeah,
too.
listeners who wanna hear more than the 2 minute and are
Yeah, she's
invested,
really
then we can at least
concise.
put it up
Mm,
there. Yeah, she is concise.
yeah,
What I do like,
yeah,
it's also daunting, but I do like that, like, those sliding scales also change within story. It's not just like, you
yes,
know, a 113, at the beginning of the story, and
yeah.
then you flip it kind of a thing, right?
They move
And
all
like that's a
the
lot of
time.
that like character, like the narrative arc has a lot of that, like things need to shift. You need to like
Mhm.
that come back or a 180 or whatever. Where like
Yeah,
this sliding scale is kind of ongoing, right? They interact with something
and
and
they
they
might go up
become
and down.
and they go up and down along that scale kind of as the story unfolds. You just want to
Uh,
make sure that they're not ending at the exact same starting point, right? That they've gained or significantly lost something from the beginning to the end.
Although I think if you had a character like start at one place and then change a bunch and then end back exactly where
That could
they
be
were,
kind of
that could be
cool.
interesting.
That
It'd
could
be
be
sort of like a
interesting.
tragic thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, let's talk about these with let's start with our characters because I feel like
Okay.
obviously we have I'll use my Mina character because she's the
Okay.
one I'm working with right now. Um So I'm trying to think. Actually, my problem, part of the reason I was interested in this sort of topic was because I have a boring character, and that's my instinct is to have boring characters. No, my instinct is to have an over explainer, hypersensitive person because I'm like that. I'm like, and
Yeah.
anyway, she's too rational. She's too like I haven't really gotten very much into the story, so she hasn't really been put to any kind of test. So right now she feels very boring. And so I was sort of interested in this. I'd say she's decently competent, probably middle to like 75% if it's like 100% at the top of the slider. Um, she's sort of relatable, but like nothing. She hasn't really sort of talked enough about herself in the story yet. And
Mhm.
because I'm a pantser, I don't know
Mhm.
if she will. That
Yeah.
sounds crazy. And I'm just gonna let that happen. And then she is decently proactive. So she's like
Yeah.
in the middle right now. She's just kind of like, yeah, that's a normal person.
Yeah.
So I think I think I think her flaw right now is currently just that she's lonely,
Mhm.
or just feels unfulfilled. Like she's kind of
Mhm.
like, yeah, my life is fine. And that's sort
Yeah.
of the problem that she kind of also doesn't realize yet. And I think some plot things will jolt that into her, I think she's gonna have, I don't know, but it's something like that. But yeah, that's for my main character. What about
I mean, she's living in a relatively oppressive space,
mm,
right?
my character?
Yeah.
Yes, but she doesn't realize that she is.
Yeah, so then
Yeah.
she could be by the plot, right, by the world in
Hmm.
which she lives in, she could actually be relatively reactive. She just looks proactive because she's got it together-ish, but, like, she's still living in a place where she doesn't know what's going on or that she's kind of going with the modes of what's expected of her, which is
Yes.
actually reactionary.
So are you using reactive as an opposite to proactive?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is that the opposite? I think of proactivity as doing something.
I mean,
And
that was the language that was used in Gina Denny's video, was that it's
oh,
reactive versus proactive.
I don't
I
know
mean,
why
I'm
that.
assuming that I mean, the opposite of proactive could be inactive.
That's what I would assume because there's a character who's, trying to do something.
Mhm.
Like, okay, why does Tamlin piss you off so much? Because he's not proactive. That's why he makes you
Yes.
so mad, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I guess, but because reactive seems like that's an action. Oh, she talks about it. She talks about it like you're doing things because you have drive versus you're just responding to external stimuli.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sorry. I don't know why I could
Yeah,
not
that
remember that.
things happen to the character and that's what pushes them to go, as opposed to them having a goal and seeking that goal out.
Okay.
It's kinda what I
Okay.
got from that. Again, it's a 2, 3-minute video, and really she only uses the
Mhm.
language of reactive versus proactive. Um,
Yes. Okay, my character is reactive then. She's
yeah,
not currently proactive.
yeah,
She's been asked to go check something out in the desert. She's like, "Okay,
yeah.
sure."
And so I think that that
Um,
might be what actually would save the what you think is a sort of flat
yeah.
reading is that she is reactive, right? The world is telling her to do something, so she does it. And it's
Mhm.
successful because she does what she's told, but she's not being proactive with anything. She's being reactive to the world around her, right? She's following the
Yeah.
orders,
She's just going through
and
life,
kind
yeah.
of filling in the role that she's expected or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, that's
And I didn't use these sliders in when making her character because A, I don't make characters. They just appear
yeah,
weirdly when I'm writing.
uh-huh,
So, but I also don't really think about this. I think these are just my instincts
yeah,
and I feel like all my characters start out very flat.
hmm
Unless the part of the plot idea or like part of the story idea was something to do with the character. Like I have a
yeah,
character who I've talked about August, like he is so the starting idea for the character was that there's somebody who's so like depressed that they're almost out of touch with reality. So they
hmm
think that their wife going missing is their wife just finally leaving them. And that was
yeah,
like the whole impetus behind that character was like somebody who's like, and actually part of that idea came from reading Silver Flames and Nesta. part of the reason that people, like, within the ACOTAR community get upset at Nesta is because they don't like how she perceives a lot of the other characters, and
Yeah.
I think that that is her depression filter that is
Yeah.
distorting things, and it's I just thought, well, like, I mean, I understood that depression distorts things, but that's, like, one of those things that really interests me in stories like August's
Yeah.
story. That's in my other story. That, but yeah, anyway, but he's like a
Mhm.
main character. Um, but yeah, so what about your? Or you can talk about both. Well, you can talk about Liev and Genevieve.
Yeah.
Or you do you call her Evie? I feel like I always hear you say Genevieve.
I
You
I
kind of
think I
switched.
call her Genevieve more often, but
Okay.
she will also I feel like there's gonna be selected people who call her Evie.
Okay.
The way she's
Got
written
it.
in the book right now is it's a lot more Genevieve unless Liev is calling her. Liev calls her Evie. Her parents call
Okay.
her
Got it.
Evie. And Gideon will not call her Evie for quite a while, and that's like a turning point in their familiarity is that he
Mhm.
switches to from sort of back and forth between Genevieve and Evie. Um, Ren doesn't call her either. Ren calls her Love because Ren's a sly little flirty, sarcastic person, and
Love
he just
every time. Or maybe he
every
doesn't
time.
refer to her directly that often.
No, but like it's like he's like, like love or hun or whatever. Like he's
It's
just kind of a
funny.
smart ass about it. And so he's just like, even when he's riling her up, when he's like teasing her, he still is like calls her love.
That's funny.
Like the first time that they bump into each other, literally, she bumps into him and she's like kind of taken aback and is like, what the like this is a different kind of person that I've run into. And like he's very attractive and he's also a little mysterious and he's like, watch it, love, kind of a thing. And so there's this like little bit of a flirty, dangerous, mysterious something. It's a
He's
slightly
got a
over
fuckboy energy with a heart of
he
gold.
Yes. Yes, he does.
Because
And
I
then
know he's
that
one of your favorite characters, so I was
he
like,
is,
"There ain't
yes.
no way he's an actual fuckboy." I'm just kidding.
No, 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 no.
You can love a fuckboy. I allow it.
Yeah, no, he has that energy,
Uh-huh.
but most of it is masking, right? He's got his own shit to deal with, and so he comes off with that, like, overly familiar, kind of flirty, but, like, within reason, right? He doesn't take it too far, he's not inappropriate, but I need enough flirtatious and kind of camaraderie between those 2 to where when we get to the point that Gideon starts to question, like, what, like, she's into that guy, what, like, I can't like her because she likes him, and then everyone's like, ew, are you kidding? No thank you. We're like,
Where does Evie or Genevieve start on the
yeah, so
sliders?
I'm worried that she starts a little too high on all of these scales. So she starts off, I think, probably proactive. Like the first scene I have is like her sparring with Liev. So like there's some training that she knows of. She knows some weaponry. She like has a little bit of like some stuff,
So
right?
competent.
Some yeah, she's competent in a skill.
Mhm.
That will come into question later when like she asks to like kind of spar with the boys and Cormac is like this is cute but is not going to save your life for what we're up against, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So like she'll kind of get a rude awakening.
Yeah.
She's proactive in that like she's the one who jumps in and like saves Gideon in that moment, right? um
And is that but that is technically a reaction, right?
it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so maybe, yeah. And, like, she's kind of questioning it the whole time, right? She's not like, "I'm" like, she is like, "He needs to live, I want him to live, I don't know why, but, like, I feel like I need to help him." So
Mhm.
maybe it is more reactionary. Relatability, I think that she's probably mid, right? That, she's kind of an everyday
Mhm.
character who is a little bit old to be living at home, but is still a little bit innocent in that, and she has dreams to do something bigger but like doesn't really know what that looks like. And so for now she's like, I'm good here, right? The
Yeah.
family is solid, and I can't imagine like really like leaving them unless there was a good reason to go.
That's her
um
lack of proactivity for the record.
Fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe she's not as proactive as I would think, where she's like, I would love to travel, I would love to go and see the world, but like I need a good
She's just
reason to
not.
leave my people, and so I'm
Yeah.
not. And relatability again, I think that could be that, I think that she's highly relatable in that she's normal, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't have magic. And she's living in a world where people have much more skill in that set than she does. And so she feels a little bit outsider, even with this
Mhm.
like good home life, like where she finds herself within her world. She's kind of less than she's ill
Yeah.
equipped. And so she makes up for that with trying to have some weapons training. And so maybe
Yeah.
she's not as boring as I think, right? So that she tries to bring up her competency because of the lack of magical
Mhm.
ability that she has. So she's
Which
like,
is
I need,
relatable, right? If you feel
yeah,
inadequate, you're like, I got to be good at something. Let me just
yeah,
try real hard. So I think that, yeah, I think that makes her trying to drive her competency up. It does make her relatable.
yeah.
And my
Liev is,
instinct was that she is pretty not balanced, but she has interesting
mhm,
levels. Sorry, balance would be that she's all the above,
yeah.
but she don't want. But yeah,
Liev is, I think he's relatable. I think he's pretty high on the relatable scale, right? He's like little brother energy.
hmm
He's picked on a little bit, right? There's some like he's real close to his dad. He kind of, just wants to like what he wants out of life is to just kind of be the next generation of his parents.
hmm
Um but his
Actually, I think
competent
that could be argued as less relatable, right? Because
fair,
that's sort of just like, oh, that's all you want. Like, I mean,
fair.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I think his proactivity, right? He has a bit of charisma and he can kind of get out there and be fun and be engaging when it comes to mortals, but not really with his own kind, right? There's like a revel scene that I have where it's like a human revel, so it's like a festive festival of some sort, like a small one, and he's
Mhm.
like, chatting up girls and stuff. Um, but he does not have that same confidence within like fairies or fae,
Okay.
which is his kind. And his competency, like he has, not only does he not have magic, but he's also like very weak, right? He has a very weak frame, a weak build. And
Like
so
physically, muscles wise.
yeah, no, he's
Okay.
he's very gangly and not really and like Genevieve even kind of like makes fun of him about not being able to use a sword, right? That he
hmm
fumbles swords and whatever else. And so I think there's some space there. I don't know.
He
I feel
seems like
like
he's competent with women.
he is
Yeah.
like he has enough like confidence to like make friends in spaces that like he can relate to people, right?
Yeah.
He's good with, if someone gives him an opening to be kind, he can make a conversation and he's like relatively outgoing. But he's also been bullied, so like he's cautious,
hmm
right? And
Yeah.
then at some point like his big flip is that he gets captured.
Yeah.
And so then that's when those things become, that's where I'm kind of struggling with this because it'll be relatable, I guess, in the sense that like he's taken from these, he'll be
Yeah.
sympathetic,
Definitely
right?
feel
He's
bad for him.
taken, he bonds with another captive, right? And they build this kind of friendship, camaraderie, leaning on each other a little bit. So that will be relatable or sympathetic.
hmm
Um, his proactivity is going to be kind of all over the place. I think he's going to be incredibly reactionary for a majority of it, and then there's going to be a big switch at the end where he is much more proactive. And
hmm
his competency, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think his competency is going to be in how to survive his capture, and it's not necessarily going to be a competency in like a skill based,
Yeah.
but
But
rather
that's his
like
skill
how does
competence.
he know how to just kind of keep his head down? When does he know to speak up? When does he know not to speak up? How does he know how to listen between the lines and keep the shit and like put things together and kind of understand the world as he's being given like puzzle pieces and being able to put those puzzle pieces together. But we're going to come out the gate with him being like probably pretty sympathetic, but very reactionary and very incompetent as far as like you just got snatched and you don't know what's going on, and then
Mhm.
those things will kind of build as they go.
Yeah.
um
I do think with a character who's like stuck in prison for a lot of attacks, like I think you can also build sort of like, you know, you can build some of this like growth internally by having
mhm,
like he can have progress towards more proactivity
mhm,
um because he's dealing with things
Yeah.
internally and thinking through things and
Yeah.
deciding things, and that's I think, and that I think that's gonna be the challenge of writing that character who's stuck somewhere,
Yeah.
is that all the progress, it was
Mhm.
gonna be mental, and we saw some of that arc with the
Yeah.
way they and the conversations with Nathera? Is
Yeah.
that her name? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I still think like that is still a competency, and but yeah, it's just gonna be like a lot of like mental
Yeah.
proactivity. Even like
Gideon's
deciding to act in certain ways and others. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like Gideon is gonna be a little bit harder for me to flesh out some of this.
Hmm.
Maybe not. I mean, I have instincts, but
We haven't written him
um
as much, right?
I have POV chapters from him. Um and one that I just wrote is right. The first one is like him kind of coming to after being saved, and it's
Mhm.
very reactionary, right? He's like, I'm going to stay like I'm sleeping. I'm just going to be like listening and taking things in. And like maybe that's proactive, is that he's like, I got to kind of, where am I? But I can't ask because I don't trust anybody. So I'm just going to listen in and see what clues I can get. And he's like trying to put pieces together already and trying to filter out what is real and what is an illusion, because I
I
was
think
an
that shows
idiot.
competency and proactivity, honestly.
Yeah, but he might
It
not be
just is like it's externally driven, but I don't necessarily means that's not. It's not. I don't think that
well,
necessarily means it's not proactive.
yeah, but I think that that balances out because at that point he's not really relatable because we don't know anything about him, right? We know that
Yeah,
he was
exactly. Yeah.
stabbed and that he was pulled out of water, right? But like we don't
Mhm.
know the things really,
Yeah.
like we're kind of finding it out. And so then the next POV chapter that I have of him, Genevieve is kind of having her meltdown, and like everyone's kind of trying to talk her off a ledge and it's not working out very well because they're like Cormac's being too harsh and Ren is being too soft.
Mm.
And like kind of there's this weird balance between this like good cop bad cop that's not working between them and her because she's just like, I gotta go. um and like Gideon realizes like it's not about reasoning with her right now. She's having an emotional reaction. She's having like a fucking panic attack. And so we just got to get her to a place to like fucking center herself for a minute and then we can talk to her. And he like
Yeah.
legit like grabs her face and is like, just breathe with me. Like, you know, and so like
Mhm.
it's also like that first moment where she's like, okay, like where their bonding kind of shifts a little bit. Um, and so I think that he kind of jumps up on that scale of like being, I mean, he's still reacting to her, so he's being reactive, but he's being more relatable, but we still don't really know a lot about this guy. But he's incredibly competent with this moment that she's having. And so he's like,
Yeah.
I recognize that this is like she's having like she can't breathe. She's freaking out and we just need to like get her to a point to calm down. So I think that
Yeah.
the
I think
scales work. I
it's
think I'm doing all
relatable
right. I'm
as
doing
well.
all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of I like the scales because I think that it is something that is a good rubric and a good diagnostic, but I also think that there's a lot of area for interpretation within that
Yeah.
too.
Because you could argue that a lot of things are proactivity when they're actually externalized
Exactly.
resources, and like, and things could be the exact same thing, but depending on the internal world could
Yeah.
be, like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what people hate about the humanities, and that's got to be our fucking.
Yeah.
It's not an answer. There's not a formula. There are
Yeah.
formulaic type things, but even those are like very interpretive. And sometimes I'm even like, am I interpreting this correctly? Like when you're like,
Mhm.
and I realized that Gina Denny talks about it as reactive versus proactive in terms of who is causing the action to happen. But yeah, so I think even that's like I was thinking about it differently, and then I was like, oh,
Mhm.
you mean like, yeah, yeah. Um,
I think part of it too is balancing out the things in which like running these scales through the things that the character themselves are doing or thinking versus what the world around them is kind of pushing them into, which I know that like that plays into it. You're like, if the world is constantly pushing them into something, then they're being reactionary.
mhm.
But it's like some of the level of competency of my characters is because they don't have magic, and so you're like, well, they can't be competent in that because of the parameters of the plot. And
Yeah, although
so,
they can be competent in, like, talking their way out of a situation that someone
yeah,
else could magic their way out of, which
yeah,
I think
exactly.
is still fair.
And
That's
that's
why
probably
you're
why
talking about
she,
Liev, I was like, "Oh, he's competent with women, or at least human
yeah,
women that he feels
yeah,
comfortable around."
yeah.
Yeah.
And that
Um,
he, yeah, and like same thing with like some of the weapons training, right? That she's not like, she's kind of making up for that. Granted, like it makes sense for who her parents are to be like, well, you got to kind of know how to protect yourself a little bit and the world in
yeah,
which she lives in. And, um, they're like, okay, so like you're gonna know how to like throw some daggers and at least be able to defend yourself. It's not so much about like full on defense, right?
mhm,
They're like, you're not gonna go up against an army or anything, but if someone tries to get crazy with you at the market, you're gonna know how to protect yourself.
yeah,
um and for like the sort of entry level scariness of the world, that she can handle herself against that. um but then when that gets more serious is when she starts to realize like, oh, I actually don't have the level of training that is going to be
mhm,
required for this particular journey. And that's when she's going
yeah,
to lean into Cormac. Cormac's interesting because I feel like Cormac has very little relatability right now, which I'm totally for. Because
mhm,
he comes off as that like stern, kind of
yeah,
no nonsense, all leadership role kind of guy.
mhm,
And that he's very proactive. He's the one that busts in. He's like, get your hands off of him, or
mhm,
we're taking him. Like, don't, like,
yeah.
they all kind of turn to him to figure out what's next. He's incredibly competent. But he's not really relatable because you're like, who's this fucking asshole who thinks that he runs the show? And then you start to see that chip away a bit more and more.
And there are also different rules for not necessarily side characters, non-POV characters.
Hmm.
So, like, sometimes you can have people who are more, they seem a certain way because A, you're not in their head, so you aren't really seeing the full picture, and also
Yeah.
because, it's not like every single character that you ever meet is like full character arc. Like some
Yeah.
people, well, and it's probably really actually just comes down to the fact that we're not in everyone's head, so you just don't fuck it. You just get what you think you see, and
Yeah.
that's like not going to be the full truth. So, because
Yeah.
really, I mean, I know from your discussions that Cormac has all these like really relatable feelings about his family and like how he
Yeah.
feel like he has, but you just don't see that, and
Yeah. You get a little bit of it with Gideon's POV chapter because like he hugs him and he's like, it's been a long time and I've missed you, and like, so that there's something there, but again,
yeah,
it's limited. And
yeah,
then you go
yeah,
right back to Genevieve's chapter where she's just like, he's fucking grumpy gills in the corner, and he's stoic, and he's
yeah.
a hard nut to crack.
Yeah, and it's kinda like, everyone is the hero of their own story, and
Yeah.
we're just not in his story, so we don't
Yeah.
see it as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
But, yeah, let's talk about some just, like, common, really popular well, since we're kind of writing in the fantasy, and because we sort of got like, you've read as the stuff that you read last, like, the 70 or 80 books, or probably by now it's, like, I don't know how many books in the last 2 years, like, 100 books or something.
Probably.
Um there you've read mostly romantasy, or yeah,
Yeah.
mostly romantasy, huh? Whereas
Yeah.
I've read, like, I've read nowhere near the amount of books you have, even though I literally was an English major and all this stuff. I've read,
Mhm.
like, the specific things, but, in terms of casual reading, I'm trying to step up my game, but I'm,
Mhm.
like, still working on the first Outlander book, which I've been working on for 3 weeks. So, but whatever, I'll get there eventually. But
Yeah.
so let's talk about some romantasy characters, since that's the characters that we know, and we're familiar with, and I think a lot of people will know these characters. Let's start with Akatar. So we already talked about Feyre a little bit,
Mhm.
but I do think there's a lot more. So in terms of magic, she obviously has a lot of incompetency,
Mhm.
but she's very competent for the character that we meet, which is a human, and she's
Yeah.
like the only one competent. Actually, this
Yeah.
is really interesting with the sisters thrown in there too, because the sisters routinely piss everyone off. Like, readers
Yeah.
always say, "Who the fuck are these girls?" And you know why? Because they're super incompetent. They're
Yeah.
not relatable. They're mean, or they come across as mean. They come
Yep.
across as lazy, who don't want to do anything, who just sit back and let life happen. And if Feyre didn't go out and hunt, they just rot to death. That's
Yeah.
how they come across.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe because that's Feyre and
Yeah.
her
But
perspective, or
they're not proactive,
not.
they're not relatable, and they're not competent.
Yeah, same with the
Yeah.
dad, kind of. He's kind of like the same as
Yeah.
them. But yes, Feyre starts out with being competent. She's
Mhm.
using her skill when the book starts. She's relatable because she's like sad. She's all these feelings and all these hopes and dreams, and she's proactive. She's taking care of business and doing. She's like going out
That
and
can
doing it
also be
all.
why people critique Feyre's character though too,
Yeah,
because
because
there's a
she's
lot of
too
people who
high
are
on all the
like, "She's
sliders.
boring, she's the worst," right? And,
Yeah,
like, that could be part of it is that she's kind of too even scaled and maybe even too high up scaled
yeah, yeah,
on those to really be like a dimensional character.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, obviously I think actually the thing that makes her compelling in the first book, although I think she could have been more compelling, but I think the thing that makes her compelling is her vast internal, like, she feels conflicted. She both hates this promise that she made to her mom and is like but also, like, doing it, and so there's this
Yeah.
weird, like, kind of, she doesn't really
Mhm.
want to do the things that she does. Like,
Yeah.
she wishes she could be proactive.
Well, and her
Or you could argue that
competency.
that is it's she's actually not being proactive. She's reacting to the fact that the world is like she has no other choice type of
Well,
thing.
and towards the middle of the first book, she becomes very, I guess, reactive, right? Because she even like kind of kicks herself at some point and it's just like I just let him, like, I sat here and I just painted and I just forgot about the rest of the world and I got
Yeah,
comfortable, and she blames
which
herself for
is
that.
relatable too. Yeah.
Yeah. And even the competency, like, she is very she's a very highly competent human, but,
Mhm.
and granted, she just fucking saved the whole world, but, like, it
Mhm.
also, has this level of incompetence, mostly because she's not given enough information,
Yeah.
um, which
It is an
is
external
is
force, but
a
still.
is a, misunderstanding quote or a lack of
Yes.
communication trope, which we're not huge fans of. But
Well, yeah.
it does, it's an outside, force that's making her incompetent.
Yeah.
But even when she's under the mountain, like, there's a
Or just
level
an extra
of,
Sunday.
yeah, yeah. Well, and there is still a level of, like, is she's maybe highly competent under the mountain, but there's still moments where um she's still reactionary, right? She's not necessarily like she's reacting to the trials, right? She's not
Mhm.
go I mean, she
She
goes
doesn't
in
have a
there.
choice.
Yeah, she's proactive when she's like, I'm gonna try to save him, right? But then she
Mhm.
gets into this bargain that makes her reactionary. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I don't know. I mean, she definitely has a sliding scale, but I do think that we start out with, like, kind of polar opposites between her and the rest of her family, where, like,
Yes.
Feyre is a little bit flat, and maybe people, that's why, a lot of people are like, I don't know why people love her because she's boring. And you're like, well,
She
because she's
just
too
solves everyone's
much. And
problems. Yeah.
then everyone hates the rest of the family. They're like, why are you worried about these fucks? They suck. You're like, well, because they're on the complete opposite end.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
like, "Wow, you don't have a soul and you're lazy and you don't do shit." Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and then, like, Elaine is the most incompetent character I've
Or at least
ever
comes
read.
across that way right
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
I will say Reese is an interesting one because he's highly competent, right? Most
mhm.
powerful High Lord, all that stuff.
Knows how
And
to play the mind games of Amarantha. It
yes.
knows, like,
He's
the ins
always
and outs. He's
scheming and doing
always,
it
yep.
all. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I'd say he's probably maybe the most competent character generally throughout
Mhm.
the whole series. Um, and but he is relatable. He's got that sad boy energy, and he is kind, and I think that's also part of that relatability is that he seems
Yeah.
like
I
down
think
to
we get
earth
that. I
and
don't think first book we
nice.
get that. I think his relatability is really low first book.
Oh, but the scenes that people love, and maybe they love this retroactively because they read Mist and Fury, and then they go back and love those scenes. I think the scenes where he's, like, at the end, like, where
Yeah.
he comes in and he's just talking to Feyre right before
Yeah.
and then at the end of the book
When he's
when he,
making the
like, is talking
bargain
to
and
her.
stuff, yeah.
Maybe not even the bargain. The bargain, he probably seems like an asshole.
Yeah.
But like when he's talking to her, like right before her last trial, he comes in and he sits on the floor and he's sad.
Yeah.
And then also when he's leaves and he has that moment where he realizes the bond,
Yeah.
for real. But like I feel like those are pretty relatable. Those are very
Mhm.
nice. He seems very kind in those moments. Or just like you just want to root for him in a weird way, even though you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I hate this guy.
Yeah.
Um, And then, and he is pretty proactive too. He's always kind of like he's trying to play Amarantha and do things
Yeah.
behind the scenes. He is trying to take, but he's also as a villain in the first book, he is that's what makes him scary. Is
Hmm.
like he's competent and so powerful, and maybe even that he's villains, should be less relatable, but we kind of like it when we first meet him at Kalamni. But that could
Yeah.
I sort of read that the first time as like that's kind of eerie. Like he seems
Yeah.
manipulative, because we
Hmm.
think he's bad. So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things with him,
I would
but
even,
obviously as it goes on, he
yeah.
gets way higher in relatability and goes down with certain competency, or he gets beat.
Yeah. I would argue that like he is less proactive with Amarantha than we think. Like I know
That's
he's
fair.
scheming and I know that he's like trying to work the but I think it's really about like
He's just kind of
it's about
doing stuff.
managing her.
Yeah, as
And
opposed to like
so, yeah,
executing a
he's
plan.
not jumping up, right? She calls on him, right? And she beckons him. She tells him what to do. And like, yes, he's like, okay, what can I do within the parameters of what she's telling me? But I
Mhm.
still think it's about like managing her psychotic nature and being like, it's kind of like a when you have like an abusive boyfriend or like an abusive parent, right? Where you're just like, stay quiet, don't be seen. Oh, they saw me. How do I make sure that this goes the way that they think
Yeah,
it's going to go?
very like
And
eggshells.
that's competent, right? Being able to sort of manage the emotions or manage the things like that. But I think that he's much more reactive in the first book than later on.
Yeah,
um he becomes much more proactive, but even in the other books, right, like he knows that she's his mate and arguably would want that,
and that's the thing that
but
pisses people off most about him is that he's like hiding this, and yeah.
but then that also becomes this sort of, I don't know if it's reactive, but that he doesn't pursue that specifically, right? He's like,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would have been willing to let you marry who you wanted to, and like I didn't actively, until you asked for help, I didn't seek out to fortify this bond, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a, yeah.
Do we want to talk through some of these other characters too?
Yeah.
Okay. What
I don't
about
know that I remember. I mean, I remember Araya enough. I think it's not as recent as yours, so you might have a little better grasp on her. But
so she's really competent, even
hmm,
though she's incompetent in the fact that she's human,
hmm,
you know.
hmm,
But anyway, in the let's say first book, she's human, so she's has a big disadvantage, but she's really like she's already killing vampires left and right the first
yeah,
scene, so she's highly competent. Um, she
she's
is
proactive. She's
proactive. She's
proactive.
going out. She's like, I'm gonna do this.
Well, and
Um,
she enters into the competition, right? Like
yeah, that's what I mean by the
yeah,
yeah,
she's
yeah.
not forced into that. She's like, I'm gonna do this.
I
Yeah,
wanna do this, yeah. And I think, relatability could be down because she's, like, essentially a princess.
yeah,
And she but I think she's the events are interesting enough to where you're not necessarily like, "I gotta root for her because I'm sad for her," or, like, because I she's my favorite person. You're just like, I don't know, I feel like those books move so fast, like,
they do. Yeah.
you're like I'm trying to think about because I feel like she's not that relatable, but she kind of is. But then
Hmm.
where does that put her on high on all three?
No, I think it would put her like middle for relatability because I think that, I mean, she comes off as being like, okay, well, you're a princess and
Mm,
you are sneaking around to kill vampires,
yeah,
but you're also the princess of a vampire king, and like, and you want to prove yourself. And so, like, I think part of that comes off as a little bit like, that's not unrelatable in a negative sort of sense, but just a
mhm.
like, who is this person?
Who's
What is
making
her?
up problems and getting
Yeah,
themselves into danger
and
for no
I
reason?
think she's curious. Like for the
Yeah.
reader, it's curious, and I think that that's
Yes.
like that level of relatability. We don't necessarily see ourselves in her yet, right,
Mhm.
or relate to her, but we're curious about her because of the lack of relatability. We're like, what is this chick doing? What's going on here? She's got friends that are doing this thing, and she's got friends
Mm.
over here, and her dad's the king, and he's gonna, and like, why does she need to prove herself? Like, what is up with this chick? And so I think that
Yeah.
she's actually unrelatable at the beginning of the story. but highly competent and highly proactive.
I do think
Um,
that need to prove yourself, that can be pretty relatable too, though, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, maybe she is, um she's an interesting one, though,
she is.
because that book just flies.
It does.
Um, I think Misha's also interesting because she's, like, a priestess, right? So she's competent in that kind of magic, but she's been sort of disabled, like, she can't
Uh-huh.
access it, and so she's both, like, kind of she has the vibes of a really competent character, but who is, like, not competent,
Yeah. She seems more like when they're fighting for their life, she's got to fight a little harder.
mhm.
Like
Yeah,
she definitely feels like she has one arm tied behind her back, which I think leads to like she's not incompetent, but I think that she's not quite as competent as the
yeah.
others, right? And she does feel a little more, I mean, I guess she's proactive in that she forces Rain into
Oh, I was
the
thinking about her book, not even
Oh,
the first
sorry.
book. But no, I guess because I'm thinking about when she's the main character. But you're right, she is doing that. I would say, but in her book, she's kind of she starts out really wandering, like
Yeah.
feeling lost, and so she's just kind of like, how did this happen to me? I got
Yeah.
captured. What the
Mhm.
fuck? And show
And
yeah,
she's a
maybe in the
little
beginning of that book, she's pretty reactive. She's just like, I guess
yeah.
I'm getting in prison now. I guess I'm
Yeah.
gonna help this guy now. I guess I'm gonna,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very reactionary. I still think mid on competency, right? Again,
She has power, but
she
she's
has
not.
powers, but not the great the powers that she could be really good at, she refuses to use because she doesn't want to
Yeah.
go
And we
against
don't even know that she has those in the beginning. I
yeah.
don't yeah.
And then even when she uses her fire power, right? It's or her sun power or whatever, like it burns her and
Mhm.
um yeah, so I think that the competency as far as like mental competency, sure, but she's also kind of broken at the beginning of those books, right?
Yeah, she's kinda
She's
she's
definitely
almost less
been kind
relatable
of
because of how she's like, I
yeah,
gotta stay away. You're like,
she's
come on.
yeah.
I felt like that.
So I think that that definitely relatability high because we've already met her. We kind of,
Yes,
but then
that
you
helps
also
too.
and then her relatability kind of stays high the whole time because you just start to get more and more and more of her story and the tragedy and the all the things.
I was a little
Um,
annoyed with her in the beginning of it though because of that attitude. I was like, "Okay, why are you being like this?" But I was like, you know, that
Colts,
yeah.
Colts.
But I still liked her pretty
Um,
much.
yeah. Asar. I know he's not on our list, but Asar, where's
Okay, so he's very competent.
very competent.
He not very relatable in the beginning. He's
Yeah,
very kind of
no.
like all business, no
Yeah,
emotion, or very limited
yeah,
emotion. He's just kind of unavailable in that sense.
yeah.
Um,
I would say
and maybe
like
not proactive because
yeah,
he's doing what
I
he's
would
supposed to
say
do.
yeah, I would say mid on the proactive scale, right? Like
Yeah.
he does have kind of a task, but I don't think it's a task that he set out for himself. Um
Yes.
and it's kind of something that he's been told-ish to do. I think that that changes, right? He becomes much more proactive later on.
Yeah. And second
But
book
yeah,
is totally different too.
I
Yeah.
think that he's pretty right, high competence, mid proactive, mid to low relatability.
Yeah. And then the relatability I think is the side that moves the quickest.
Yeah.
Um, you know, partially, on some level it's interesting, like, people go, "Oh, this is the MMC. Alright,"
Hmm.
and you start to kinda like him before you probably should.
Yeah.
Like, if you didn't know if it wasn't billed as a romantasy, you might not like him as soon as you do.
Yeah.
But I always delude myself and go, "This might not be the person," and
Yeah.
so I don't know until he is, he's not.
Yeah.
And
He might be
so
Kale. This might be Kale.
exactly, so I kind
Yeah.
of take that approach because I don't wanna like someone until I'm like, I can't help it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I really try to do that whenever I read these kinds of books. And, yeah, so but yeah, he's very interesting, but I think he gets relatable very quickly. You just kinda I don't know.
Yeah.
So now Violet and Zayden are the people that a lot of people know them, and I don't remember them as well,
Yeah.
but I will say so Violet is So she's hyper competent in an area that doesn't matter for the thing that she's doing. So
Yeah.
she's like a scribe, very competent, but she's
Mhm.
not doing that.
Yeah.
So let's think. She's being forced to do this by her mom. So
Right.
not
Reaction.
proactive.
Mhm.
Is she relatable? I didn't really think so, but I'm trying to think of why.
I didn't think yeah,
Maybe because, it's not very relatable to just I don't know, I just really had a hard time being like, "What do you mean the first thing we find out about you is that you are being forced to do this school just because your mom said." Part of me was like, uh, "For something that's this serious, you ain't I'm sorry, I'll walk away from." I don't
yeah.
I just it's really hard to it's hard to imagine a mom like that, but it's also hard to imagine accepting that. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
"Girl, just do
Yeah.
find a way." Like, is hard, but I just kinda had to ignore that because I thought it wasn't really part of the
I
story to,
think
like,
some of the
figure out.
dynamics early on make her relatable, right? We know her dad is dead, so you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
sad."
you feel bad for her, and her
And
mom
then
sucks, so
and
you're
her
like,
mom
"That
sucks,
sucks."
right? And
Yeah.
you're like, "Well, great, of all the parents to
Oh,
be left with, it's the one who's like super she's a fucking general and she's rigid and she's forcing you into
yeah.
this thing," which you're like, "All right, if I'm just going to like suspend disbelief and be like, mommy said it, and so I got to do it." And then you also get a lot of the like Mira and her interaction very
Yes.
early on where her sister's like,
That's
"You got to
probably where
take."
she's relatable.
Yeah, and because she's
Yeah.
like, "Take this book out of your bag. Like you're going to fucking fall over and here use better shoes," and like getting that advice
That's
from her
right. That is
sister.
how it
Like I think
starts.
that makes her relatable. A lot of the like the fear that she has going up against the parapet right in the beginning and like seeing these other
Yes, that's very
people,
relatable.
that's super relatable. I think we learned really early on that her and Dean are friends and they've grown up together. So you get this like
That is not his name.
Dean, Dane, Dane.
Dane, Dane, Dane,
Sorry.
Dane.
Oh my
I
god.
was like, "What? Who?"
Sorry.
Okay,
I
Dane. Yeah, you're right. I couldn't remember. Yeah,
Jesus
okay, so
Christ.
sorry.
We're
Yeah,
gonna have to
we
cut
learn early
these.
on.
Yeah, that her and Dane are friends and that they grew up together. And he like is kind of maybe watching her back, or at least acknowledges that she's up there and he offers her a
Yeah.
little of something. So like you can tell that she's in this world, right? Like, yes, she's
Yeah.
being forced into something, but like she has kind of a support. She's got some stuff. And then we see that she also has fears of not just the parapet, but also some other cadets and people that
Mhm.
she goes to school with, right? We see the Jack Barlow moment where that's like, wow, that's fucking terrifying and whatever. And we see
Yeah.
Zayden and she's scared of that guy. So I think there's some
She is
relatability
not.
there. Yeah, I know.
She should have been
Um,
much more scared for much longer.
yes. Yes. But I think that there's relatability in her connection to the people who are in her support
Yeah.
system.
She
Um,
she's very normal with, like, her hopes and
yeah.
fears and stuff,
And it
yeah.
seems like it's like it's written in a way that's those are things that happen across any world, right?
Mhm.
A mom who's too harsh, a dad who's dead, a friend who's like kind of rooting for you, but like also has to kind of keep himself in line, and a sister who's got your back. Like you can put that algorithm into
Yeah,
any book, and it could work.
yeah,
Um, I think yeah, reactionary right off the bat. She's reaction because she's being forced into it.
yeah.
Um, and even the way that she gets across the parapet, by
Oh, yeah, she, like,
reciting.
stalls,
Well,
and
doesn't she
then
like recite history and shit?
I think that's later, or maybe it's during that, but, God, don't remind
But
me,
like
that
she's
is
not she's not necessarily like fighting to win yet, right? She's like in survival mode. It's all
yeah.
reaction. And her
I think it's fair
competence,
that she freezes a bit, but
sure.
yeah, I think she gets
And
chased off the parapet, doesn't she, by
she
Jack
d-
Harlow?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then her competency, I think I mean she has like kind of low competency in the world that she's being thrust into, even though she is smart and she
Yes,
knows
and
how
she does
to.
wield her current competencies to give her an edge, right? She
Yeah.
makes, like, the
And even
poisons and
and even in
stuff.
Onyx Storm, I mean, there's still a level of competency, right? She's having to use the thingy, her little bracelet thingy to like um
Yeah,
to control her magic. So like even her competency within her magic is still flawed.
yeah.
Um they're still unearthing venom problems, right? That she doesn't have
Mhm.
all the information. I think she
And
becomes
flying with
much
tails
more.
is like a competency thing as well.
Yeah, she becomes much more proactive as the story goes, but that's kind of like I feel
Yeah.
like that's one of the things that
All characters should be
yeah,
proactive.
and
That's why they're a character. Yeah.
exactly. And so I think that that's one thing that is probably going to be harder to play with is like when can you have a character that's still being the hero of their own story but still teeters that scale of proactivity and reactivity.
Yeah.
But she does. I mean, she still has those moments where she's like, this is, she's reacting to a lot of the choices that Zayden's doing, right? Or
Yeah.
vice versa. Um, so yeah, I think that her sliding scale, but yeah, the fact that I mean, it is a little bit harder to put her through the algorithm of relatability, which was kind of fun to do. Where you're like, oh right, she was close to her sister for like
That's
a
what I had to remember.
chapter.
I was like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah. Now Zayden is interesting because we don't see him for a long time. Do we get POVs from Zayden? No. Okay. So,
we get
but
one
so
chapter. We get one chapter at the end of the books.
yeah. So okay, not really. So, so okay, but he still does have like he's extremely competent. That is like his
Hmm.
big thing is that he's like that guy in powers and like on the mat.
He's got a political position.
Yeah,
He's a whatever fucking 12th
tragic
year or whatever the
backstory.
fuck
It's
he
very
is.
relatable because of the tragedy. Even though we're pitted against him in the beginning, I was like, that sucks that kid's that's a sad kid. Like
Yeah.
I could never get on the but that's why
Yeah.
it's like annoying that that's billed as an enemy still ever because I'm like, it's not an enemy. He's
Yeah,
like
no.
a tragic character who's been pitted as your enemy, and that's
Mhm.
fucked up. Like I really had a hard
Yeah,
time
and
with
it
that.
also like because you find out pretty early on like oh he's a member of this group of kids whose parents did a thing and they've been kind of labeled as the children of
They're
traitors.
looking out for each other.
And yeah, which of course they would be, right?
And,
And
like,
so
absolutely, you should do that.
I think his relatability is too high for the goals of the book.
Yeah, or too
That
high too
his
early. It could've
Yeah,
just
and that
been
his
longer.
relatability maybe should have been pushed a little bit further. Um,
Like, maybe he still, like, lashes out and is, like, an asshole
yeah,
because, like, I think we needed a little more
yeah.
assholeness from Xaden. Especially as it relates to Violet, like,
Or
it
even
made
some
me
reluctance, even if it's not an
yeah,
asshole thing, but some reluctance to like, why won't he open up? Or why can't you just have a normal fucking conversation with me? Like, you're supposed to be a superior officer. Just teach me. Like, what is
yeah,
your problem? And like him pushing her away and just being like, not worth my time or whatever.
yeah.
And like, I guess that's asshole moments, but like, have some more reluctance as opposed to being like our dragons are fucking so we're super horny so I'm gonna kiss you now like okay.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, like, I don't necessarily want people to just have that stuff just for that sake, but you got to find a way to balance it a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I even like the horny dragon thing is interesting. It sort of shows like a moment of weakness, but I
Mhm.
do think it happened too early. Like,
Yeah.
or it should have happened where there was feelings
Mhm.
and maybe, but then you resisted the first time, there just felt
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I just felt like he needed to be more enemy for longer and also needed to not like, I
That or
felt like
like
instant love. Like,
yeah, or like
just
get her
always obsessed
close
with
to
her.
kissing her and then pulling back,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So then she's like, Well, is this because you like me or is this because of what's going on between the dragons?" Right? Where she
Yeah.
starts questioning, was that
They
a
were
real
almost total strangers when they did that.
yeah.
I was
And, like,
like,
even when she's spying on him and he catches her and he's, like, kinda kind about it, you're like, This should be a bigger issue."
yeah, or at the very least, you want her to think that
Yeah.
well, does he scare her? Maybe he does.
I mean, she says it, but I don't think she shows it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the show not tell.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah,
I think
but
later, I mean, if we run this algorithm through, like, Onyx Storm, right, he's high relatability, less competent because now
yeah,
he's
he's
Venom,
caving. Yeah.
right? And, I mean,
Kind of
I don't
also not
not as proactive.
yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, he's making a plan because, but we
He's
find that out
trying
at the end that he's making a
yeah.
plan.
It does feel like he's barely trying to stay one step ahead the whole
Yeah,
time.
but he's making a plan for his demise. He's not making a plan to win. He's making a
That
plan so
is
that
still, like, forward
it's still,
motion, yeah.
yeah, it is.
and it's still, like, for, like, the greater good, uh,
Yeah.
so it can still be seen as, like, that's character development because
Mhm.
he's willing to do that type of thing,
Yeah.
even though I kinda think he was always willing to do that, but, yeah, those are interesting ones. Wow, you just jogged my memory so much about 4th Ring.
Yeah, I do think that it's nice to see that some of these are a little hard to run through that, because it makes me feel a little bit better about my
Yeah.
characters when I'm like, wait, are they? Is this? Am I doing this right? Is this happening? Um, I think
Oh,
I think the problem arises if you have them all set to the same, either like wherever they are. Either they're
mhm.
all extreme on one end or the other, or they're all mid. Like the
Yeah,
thing is that like it doesn't matter what you're kind of doing within this, so long as those like tick marks are at different intervals and that those shift. So like there's some variety, there's some movement, and that those things kind of change. And you're not just having everybody who's like absolutely mid on everything, because then it's boring,
yeah,
or flat because they're on the extremes of things.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
like with Highburn, right? Highburn is a boring villain. He's not relatable. We know nothing about him. He
Yeah,
wants
and the
his
best
human land.
villains, you learn about why they are the way they are, and then they're relatable, and that's what makes them so good.
Yeah.
Because it's tragic. You're like, "Wow, this you were so close," or
Yeah.
you didn't have to be like this." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
yeah,
Highburn, I guess,
you don't get to see.
like Highburn, I guess he's proactive
Yeah,
ish. Yeah, he's
yeah,
proactive, but
yeah.
he's not
He's
relatable.
he's not
His
relatable at
comp
all.
and his competency, I guess, is I mean, he has the
He's
cauldron, so I guess
scary. Like,
yeah.
I'd say the ability to cause harm to the main characters, that's really for a villain, that's like, so if they or if they're uh, fairly scared. I think that was
Yeah.
probably the problems with Zayden, right? Zayden is billed as a villain first,
Yeah.
and he is not believable because I'm just like, you think he's hot right away. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you're just, this is not a villain to you.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well,
but I
like
think
so
Hybern's
Amarantha,
not a
I
good one.
think we could if like Amarantha could end up being a problematic villain then because she's not relatable. I mean,
Yes.
we know the story about her sister, but even still, she's just like kind of a dick for being a dick's sake, right? She's not
Yeah.
incredibly relatable. We don't have sympathy for her.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's not like all villains have to be relatable,
no, but I
but
think
oftentimes that's what makes it like,
yeah, I don't think that she's incredibly
yeah.
flat though, because she
No.
is proactive and she's
And
highly
because she has weird
competent.
incompetencies. She's
Yeah,
like, gave
that's
them this
true.
little
She's not highly
loophole, and
competent. She lets people
she's erratic, and
her hubris.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's her
Yeah, she's
incompetency, like,
arrogant and thinks that she can't be defeated, so then her competency kind of comes down because if she had really thought out her bargains, she could
yeah,
actually trap them well, but she leaves these asinine loopholes or she gives them more than one option to break spells. And you're like, "Why are you being generous right now? Like,
yeah,
what? Just just take it and go."
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, the villains, that's a whole
So even
interesting
the villains, I
aspect.
guess I was being too harsh on them and say that they're all gonna be flat. I'm trying to think of a villain who's like unrelatable, reactive, and not competent. Or I
Well, and
guess the
there's
opposite.
sometimes there's certain kinds of stories that can allow for that. Like, I think more classic stories, it's just like, this is about good and evil, and it's very
Yeah.
like modernist in terms of there's a happy ending. Those
Yeah.
are gonna have oftentimes more flat villains. Um, uh, like Voldemort or Umbridge. There's
Tamlin is one to run through this algorithm
yeah, yeah.
because Tamlin is incompetent as fuck. He does
Yes.
not seem like okay, he can fight a Naga and he is power, but like I just find him to be completely incompetent. He's reactionary. There's no proactivity in that man at all. And he's not really relatable because we don't really know his story. Like we know that his dad sucked, but and we have like some points and we know his relationship to Feyre and that but like even that's
Mhm.
not
Some moments
great.
in the first book that are definitely meant to increase his relatability when he's like sort of showing her his real personality and his feelings, and but I
But
just think they're
even
not that successful, but I think they
well, they're
were
also
that's what
kind
they're
of
designed to
flat.
do.
Like what's his feelings that he likes her? that
Yeah.
he, and like he's not particularly endearing when it comes to Lucian, right? Like Lucian's supposed to be his
He's
fucking
too mean to
yeah, like
Lucian.
Lucian is supposed to be his best friend, and he seems like he still keeps him at arm's length, right?
Yeah.
That he doesn't, and you could be like, oh, well, that's his emissary, and he works for him, and there's a a
That in
hierarchy, and so
itself feels
fine,
kinda tragic.
yeah. But you're
Yeah.
like, but this could be your dude, right? And like you're still kind of like keeping him, at keeping a distance with him. The competency where you're just like, fuck, man, do anything, right? So it's like completely reactionary, but even his competence within that, you're like, you don't know if he even has plans or ideas. He's putting things in everybody else's hands, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to send out my
Now,
guys so that
on
this,
second read through, it's much more maddening. On first read through, you
sure,
don't really realize. You think he's very competent, to be
sure.
fair. Yeah.
I mean, when I was reading it the first time and he was under the mountain, I was like, what is this guy doing? He's not doing a fucking
Yes.
thing.
That's
He's
when his
not,
incompetence is really maddening. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, not at all.
Okay, okay.
I
Okay.
was trying to filter out my second read through bias.
'Cause it's hard because 'cause you're
It
like,
is.
"What are you doing?" But you're like, "Okay, no,
Well,
but
and I
actually
know where
it
we
fair that he's doing all this stuff." He actually seems
well,
he seems very competent the first read through
that's true.
before you know the truth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because he's, he has this, he's able to kill things that she can't even imagine
Yeah.
killing. He, makes the table smaller, and he does these like acts of magic that look incredibly like,
Yeah.
even if this is his basis level of magic, he has a handle on it.
Does
Um,
also seem like he's the first person to, like, see Feyre, to, like, give a shit and, like, to
yeah.
make she's doing things for everyone else for them to, like,
Yeah.
but he's just like, "Just paint, just
Uh-huh,
chill," like, and that's
uh-huh.
that's, like, a kindness that I think people
Yeah.
like, in that first book. But yeah, yeah, Tamlin is interesting. Is this would this be what is I don't really know what the definition of an algorithm is, by the way. I feel like is that I mean, this is definitely a model. I don't know what algorithm is, but I'm sure. Every time you say that, I
Again,
keep being like, is that what that is? But maybe it is. I don't know science or tech.
like the actual definition. I know it's like we always like we know what it is and
It's
we
like
use it, and but it's like
because I just think algorithm. That's like what
it's a
you can
process or
define.
set of rules to be followed in calculations or other problem-solving operations, especially by a computer.
I think you could say it for this.
It's an algorithm.
This is like the
Yeah.
code of the character. It's
Yeah.
like okay, okay. But yeah, wow, so interesting. This so like we could do this. I mean, I've seen people as they talk through these people like same with structure, story structure. There's so many examples where people talk through them, but
Yeah.
I think it's a good exercise to just us think through it. Like,
Mhm.
sure, we could look up the exact. Someone's calculated the relatability of Feyre,
Well,
like
and
but I think
yeah,
it's interesting exercise for us to think about why and how and to articulate that as a really
I
it's kind of
also
more
I
challenging than you
also
think it would
I
be.
think that I struggle with my characters. My like good guys characters, I feel like I make them kind of too good, right? They always make the right
Yes,
choices.
that's my problem.
They always do the things that are supposed to what I would well, I mean good for me, right? They choose the path of least resistance. They don't hurt
They do
anybody's
what the
feelings, right?
writer
They go
tells
very
them.
fucking Hufflepuff with it, right? They're just
Yeah,
like, I'm going to be kind all the time. And so I think that this is a different way to run that through the characters and be like, instead of thinking about are they making the right choice or the wrong
yeah.
choice,
Or do I
thinking
give them a
more about
random flaw just for to mix
yeah,
it up?
exactly, right? Or yeah, instead of being like, "Oh, well, I need to put a dash of selfishness in there," specifically like run it through kind of I think that this is a broader
Yeah,
algorithm that you can put them through to be like, okay, well, even if they're making the right choices, are they making it proactively or is this a reaction, right?
like they're doing
Even
it out of
though,
spite
yeah,
because they don't
even
have
if
it.
they're
Yeah,
showing this bravery, is this because of a competence or because they're overcompensating for the lack of competence,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or is this is this being like big and bold, is that postulating or is this actually what they're doing? um and even the relatability moments, right? Sometimes you don't want your character be relatable right out the gate, right? You want them to be a little standoffish or to be curious, right? That you want your readers to be curious about their story as
Mhm.
opposed to being an open book for lack of
Yeah.
puns.
Well, and
Um,
yeah, a lot of people,
but yeah,
the thing is the moments of the story is what makes them like who they should be or who they are going
yeah,
to be or who they are supposed to be. Yeah, so it's like they might be flat because they're floating through life and they need
yeah.
to be put on a path
Hmm.
where their purpose comes from a path or whatever.
Well, and so like
Um
what I worry about with writing the villain, right? The king is that
you have villains. I don't have any villains yet.
well, and so then my problem is that I think that they're all going to be ticked up too high. So
Yeah. Oh, I do have villains. I just haven't put them I've written random
sure.
scenes that are one-offs, but yeah.
Yeah, I
Um
haven't written any scenes with
yeah.
him yet, but like he's
Okay.
incredibly proactive. He is very competent, right? But I at the beginning, he's
He's not
unrelatable.
relatable.
He's not
Yeah.
relatable.
Well, and even
But
if you know his motivations, but then he like a villain can still be unrelatable because oh, you had a tragic past story, but then you killed 60,000
yeah,
people. Okay,
yeah,
not relatable anymore, you know?
yeah.
So
And
it
that's
might
part
be
of it
that.
is
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's part of his is that like, okay, well, I can kind of get the inception of this
Why
pain
you
or
would
the
feel
inception
sad. Yeah.
of this moment of wanting some justice, but like now you've taken it too far. But
Mhm.
also I feel like the more that I try to unravel some of the sympathetic aspects of the king is when he's going to become more reactionary because
Mhm.
then he's actually being attacked as opposed to being the one that's always attacking, right?
Yeah.
Or his competency is going to come into question because he loses things that he's been trying to keep a hold on.
Mhm.
So like balancing that out. But yeah,
Yeah. That's so interesting.
I think it would be hard to write a character that is the extremes. It would be
Yeah, and
very
it's
easy
not
though
very
to find
fun.
a character that's in the middle though. I think that's
Yeah.
where you're like
Well, even
that's the
those are the
scary
ones that are
part.
like you're like, okay, cool. I don't really care that much, you know? Like there's
Yeah.
they can read flat
Yeah, you're like
even
I
if
get
they're like
it. They kind of know what they're doing and
yeah.
sometimes they're reactive and sometimes they're proactive. It depends on the situation, but you're not invested.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sanderson in some of his videos on this, he talks through some really interesting examples of like, okay, competency is interesting because we like to see people doing what they're supposed to do, like being good at shit and just like
Yeah.
getting it done. And that's why the first trial for Feyre, since we talked so much about Akatar already, that's satisfying because we know this is what this bitch can do. And then
Yeah.
she does it and it's cool and she like sort of against all odds, right? Like, and
Yeah.
whereas in the second trial, she's like very incompetent, and we're like, "Ah," like that's
Yeah. And she
it's
needs
very
help.
interesting. Yeah, um, she needs help, and she gets it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so he talked. They talk. There's a lot of examples, so I feel like I just like to listen to people just talk through stuff like
Mhm.
this. Yeah, even though I don't even know half of his like examples, I'm like I never watched that show or I never saw that or
Yeah.
whatever.
I
Okay.
think it would be very hard for us to find a character that is mid-range on all of these because that's been edited out of published books.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. You want to hear a poem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me
It's here in the document.
ooh,
So
it's a
this is
longer
more
one.
like of a narrative poem, and it's slight trigger warning,
Okay.
sort of. It's about a
Okay.
jumper, essentially.
Okay.
Um. But okay. It's another Sharon Olds poem. She's one of my favorites, and so I have a lot of poems that I like. Okay. This is called Summer Solstice, New York City. By the end of the longest day of the year, he could not stand it. He went up the iron stairs through the roof of the building and over the soft, tarry surface to the edge, put one leg over the complex green tin cornice, and said if they came a step closer, that was it. Then the huge machinery of the earth began to work for his life. The cops came in their suits, blue gray as the sky on a cloudy evening, and one put on a bulletproof vest, a black shell around his own life, the life of his children's father, in case the man was armed, and one, slung with a rope like the sign of his bounden duty, came up out of a hole in the top of the neighboring building, like the gold hole they say is in the top of the head, and began to lurk toward the man who wanted to die. The tallest cop approached him directly, softly, slowly, talking to him, talking, talking, while the man's leg hung over the lip of the next world, and the crowd gathered in the street, silent, and the hairy net with its implacable grid was unfolded near the curb and spread out and stretched as a sheet is prepared to receive a birth. Then they all came a little closer, where he squatted next to his death, his shirt glowing its milky glow like something growing in a dish at night in the dark in a lab. And then everything stopped, as his body jerked and he stepped down from the parapet and went toward them, and they closed on him. I thought they were going to beat him up, as a mother whose child has been lost will scream at the child when it's found. They took him by the arms and held him up and leaned him against the wall of the chimney, and the tall cop lit a cigarette in his mouth and gave it to him. And then they all lit cigarettes, and the red, glowing ends burned like tiny campfires we lit at night back at the beginning of the world.
I like it.
Yeah, it's one of those just like you're kind of like, what's happening? What is this? It's a very like I feel like it's there's a lot of motion in the poem, and
Mhm.
um yeah, there's something I've always loved lines like the huge machinery of the earth, because 'cause you're
Mhm.
like, yeah, like you sort of get a sense of like a big factory, but you're like, that is kind of like it
Yeah.
shouldn't a natural metaphor should be more suiting, but for some reason it just like works. It's like
Mhm.
everything's sort of whirring in the gears and
Well,
stuff.
and that the people are the cogs in the
Yeah.
wheel, and
Yeah,
that's
and you
fun.
sort of can visualize them, like, even though there's, like, mixed metaphors here and there's, like, different things, you kind of, like you really see it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, like, a very just, like, listing out all the things.
Well, and I
Um,
love this, like, wanting to die, imagery of death,
yeah.
shifting into rebirth, and then we get this, like, beginning of the world line at the
Yeah.
end, and so it has this, like, dying rebirth sort of imagery throughout. That's like, I feel like that's a fun aspect of the storytelling of this poem.
Yeah, plus campfires are like the first sign of
Yeah,
community, and
yeah,
like that's civilization is
mhm,
the meeting around a fire. And so it's like, oh, in this moment, like one officer takes it from lights a cigarette in his mouth and puts it in his mouth. It's a very
mhm,
like weird kind of intimacy, and it's also
yeah.
like it's on top of a city skyscraper, but then you get this really cool ending image with the campfires back at the beginning of the world.
Well, and
Um,
you have this, like, feeling of intense loneliness at the beginning, right?
yes.
He's had enough. He doesn't want this. He's by himself. He's making this choice out of loneliness. You don't get that line, but you feel that.
Hmm.
And then at the end, it's this whole support, this encircling of him, this, like,
Yeah.
this embrace almost
Pushing him up
of
against and lighting a cigarette for him is kind of
yeah, and like
weirdly
have
like a hug in a weird way.
yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite poems that I always think back to. That line, where he squatted next to his death, that's one of those I've probably written 10 poems that were based on some idea because of that line or something like that. Um, uh, or just the
Where is
vibes of
that
this
at?
poem. It's like towards the bottom third. It says, "Then they all came a little closer, where he
Mm,
squatted next to his death, his shirt's glowing, its milky glow, like something growing in a dish at night." Um, yeah,
yeah.
it's hard to tell you where because the whole thing's like
No, no,
in
no, that's fun.
one
Yeah.
stanza. But yeah, um, but I just like yeah, or the like the lip of the next world. You're like
Mhm.
that's a I don't know. I'm a very like a sucker for an image and stuff. So I don't know. Those are just have always fascinated me.
Right, the net, unfolded near the curb and spread out, like, and stretched as a sheet is prepared to receive birth, but it would be receiving, right, like, sort of saving his life clearly, but, like,
Yeah.
also, like, that's his death, and yeah, I like this. This was
Yeah.
you've got good poems.
And, I get yeah, I'm gonna try to bring a poem every week. Last week, we just talked so much. It
We
was
did. We talked a
crazy.
lot.
But,
Yes.
yeah, I'll find one for next week too. And, yeah,
Do we have a plan for next week's episode? We have no plans for
I have
next
no
week's episode.
plans. Well, we could talk fated mates.
Ooh, let's talk fated mates.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Fated mates. So, this might be more of your avenue because you've read a lot more Fated Mates story.
Mhm.
I have not read. I've read just the ones that you know every Fated Mates story that I've read. I've never read
Yeah.
it outside of Romantasy. I understand the premise, and I think it's interesting story-wise because it sort of says if there are fated mates, this love story is for sure, and you're not
Yeah.
escaping this. And so there's a weird, like, inevitability that comes with that, but
Yeah.
also, like, I don't know, there can be interesting tension or stakes with that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so okay, I think that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I feel like the fated mates. Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. But yes, it
okay.
can be something that feels like, well, they're just going to be together forever. But I think that I think ones that are done well have a sense
Yeah.
of choice and decision, and have a sense of reluctance built into that.
Yeah. And I think there can be such interesting things. I think it's just like the interesting challenge is that you have a structural thing that's like this is what this story is. Therefore,
Yeah,
we'll get there, but like how the fuck are we gonna get, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I think that'll be really nice. So okay. So we'll do that next week.
Until then, keep reading.
Keep writing.